Hello, welcome to Zines and Roger. This is a tutorial for join as you go ribbing, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you a couple of different stitch patterns so that you can pick your favourite, but essentially the principle is the same in that you work rows of ribbing up and down, and as you go you join as you go. It's literally that simple. Each stitch pattern, I guess, has its own level of difficulty. None of them are supremely hard, but they all have a different look about them, and it's just a question of which one is your favourite, really. So what I'm going to do is just go over briefly some of the different stitch patterns and the way they can be used. I'll put timestamps below so that you can jump straight to the tutorials if you want, and a link to my blog post because I've written an accompanying blog post to go with this video. Right, okay. So what I've got in front of me here is my Road to Nowhere shawl, where my join as you go ribbing is all around the outside of the shawl. This stitch is US single crochets in the back loop only, worked up and down, up and down, up and down, joining this way as I go. And then this one is a US half double placed in the front third loop of the stitch. I'll go into that in a bit more detail as I show you how to do it. Again, this one goes all the way around the outside of this shawl, which is my Gudrun shawl. It's got a granny motif and then this lovely ribbing all the way around. Unfortunately, this Road to Nowhere one's a bit dark, so you can't really see the back loop only rib action. I don't know, maybe you can see it compared to this one, but they are different. Again, I'll touch on that as we go. So I just wanted to show you, this is one way that you can use join as you go ribbing, but it's also great for so many other crochet projects. So ribbing obviously works really well on cuffs and waistbands and button bands as well. This join as you go ribbing, I worked all along the bottom of my little fluffy clouds cardigan and then continued up the sides. It does look a little bit tatty. It's not brand new. I do wear this quite a lot, so apologies if it looks a bit beat up, but that shows that it's well loved. The ribbing is one of the reasons why I love this cardigan design so much. It just really is my favourite ribbing at the moment, and I'll show you this one as part of the tutorial. It's a yarn over slip stitch with a normal slip stitch in the back loop only, and you will find that a lot of ribbing is back loop only just because it kind of pushes other stitches forward to create that rib. Finally, let me show you my perfect cardigan. This is join as you go ribbing, but instead of working vertically as the little fluffy clouds has, this one works horizontally, up and down this way. And this is the front third loop rib on this one, and I've joined it as I've worked it onto the main body of my cardigan. Now, before we go into the tutorials proper, one, I'm going to apologise for the building work that's going on behind me because we've got an extension being built at the moment, and I have no time for silence in this house. So when am I going to film video tutorials? It's really difficult, but today is actually one of the quieter days, which is why I've done it. Anyway, what I want to talk about a little bit in this cardigan is that my stitches, because they're this way, sorry, let me turn the cardigan around again. Because my rows are this way, as you work it, you're left with a rough edge, aren't you? Or a raw edge, I suppose. And in order to make the join as you go ribbing the neatest it can be, I colour matched and made some single crochets along the ends of the rows, and that gave me a really nice tidy foundation in which to work my join as you go ribbing. The number of single crochets you work down this raw edge is dependent on the height of all of these stitches, okay, so just bear that in mind. the other thing to bear in mind is that a lot of join as you go ribbing has a right side and a wrong side. So I've purposely attached this yarn and worked this ribbing so that this is the right side and it's super pretty. And then you can, on the wrong side, you can see the slip stitches where I've anchored the work to the main body of the cardigan. So I knew this is something that happens with join as you go. So I worked it out to make sure that these slip stitches were on the wrong side, not the right side. So bear that in mind when you're working your join as you go, because it does make a huge difference. I've just noticed a stain on this one as well. Look, it's well loved, all right. I'm just going to hide that. But yeah, here you go. You can see the difference between right side and wrong side. Let's start with the half double crochet in the front third loop. If for no other reason other than that I use it quite a lot. Chain as many as you like. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I don't know, 8. Should we go for 8? And then this is going to be the depth of the rib. I like to work in the back bumps. Here's the back of the chain. Here are the bumps. So those are the things we work into. It creates a much neater look than working into a front loop. So avoid the first one. We're going to work into the second one. Yarn over and insert the hook into the back bump. Yarn over, pull through. You've got 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through all 3 of those. And then working all the way down the back bumps of the chain, we're going to work our way back down towards the piece of crochet that we're joining to. Now I think I chained 8, and if luck is on my side, well, and a little bit of skill, that means I should have 7 stitches by the end of this. Fingers crossed. I don't know why I sound so worried. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You've worked 7 half doubles. That's a UK half treble. Now we had our work facing, we joined here and our work was facing this way. So try not to let this twist at any point. And it does sort of have a tendency to do that because we twisted it to work into the back bumps. So just make sure that it is the way you want it to be. And then this is where we attached our yarn. So in the next 2 stitches of the main piece of work, work 2 slip stitches, 1 in the first stitch, 1 in the second stitch. And that's how it looks at the very beginning. Turn the work, and you've got 2 slip stitches that you've just made. Don't work into those because it'll increase your rib and you don't want that to happen. So you skip those 2 and you're going to work into the first stitch of your first row. This is working into the front third loop, okay? So let me just remove my hook a second and get my needle back, because typically these 2 loops make the top of a stitch, and that looks like a traditional kind of crochet stitch, yeah? Well, at the front you have a third loop. We're going to work our stitch into that. Then by doing so, it pushes these stitches away from you, and they lift, and that's what creates the rib look, okay? And it's the same both sides. It'll look the same both sides. The only difference being is that one side you'll see your slip stitch joins and the other side you won't. So skip those first 2 stitches, yarn round hook, insert the hook into the first front third loop. yarn over, pull through, then all 3 loops, da-da, and you do 1, 2, 3, try not to sneeze, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, there we go. Chain 1 and turn, and again yarn over, and then we're always inserting our hook into the front 3rd loop. And then because we chained 8 at the beginning, we have 7 stitches. And so it will be 7 stitches all the way along. My advice is to count every few rows because it is easy to drop a stitch or pick up a stitch. And I'm quite vigilant about counting because I don't want to have to rip back several inches of work. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, and it is that easy. Slip stitch 2. I've made a mistake. I think I might try and own this one rather than redo the video, because actually it's quite useful. I can see almost immediately that my stitches are too wide just to slip stitch twice. That means that this rib, if I were to work it with 2 slip stitches every row that I come back down here and anchor it, it's going to fan out because these stitches are too wide. So what I should be doing is slip stitching 3 times. I'm gonna have this as a valuable teaching moment rather than feeling like a chump. But that, you know, it's okay. So I'm gonna undo that work and then just make a 3rd slip stitch. And then turn, missing the 3 slip stitches, and then carry on as normal and pretend it never happened. 1, 2, 3. So it is a fairly simple 1-row pattern repeat, with the only exception it will look like a 2-row pattern repeat as written because one of the rows includes the slip stitches. But ultimately, as you go up and down, you're doing half double crochets in the front 3rd loop, whether or not you're going up, whether or not you're going down. So I've done 3 slip stitches there, yarn over, missing those 3 slip stitches, and as you work more and more rows, you see the rib effect appear, and it gets a little bit more exciting, and you can see why you're doing what you're doing. Okey pokes. So that's the front 3rd loop. Do you think, is that enough? Do you want me to do a couple more rows? This, the one closest to the join can be sometimes tricky to see, but I just pop my hook in to the loop that's very, very close to the work and work that final stitch. 1, 2, 3. There you go. So that's what it looked like I'll come back and I'll just show you when it's completed. At this point, I'm really near the end. I thought I would quickly jump in and say, because you've worked 3 slip stitches for each pair of rib, so up and down once is a pair, and then you attached 1 here, you're looking at multiples of 3 plus the beginning stitch. Ideally, you'd then therefore end with 3. When I worked my little swatch this morning, I didn't bother counting however many I had, just because I wasn't that fast. Don't tell anyone. But just to show you that I have 2 stitches here at the end. Ideally, 3 would have been great, but I'm not worried about it, and I'm not averse to fudging. So just to show you that it doesn't hurt to have just 2 at the end rather than 3. If I say we're on one of the last rows here, what you can see is that I'm just going to slip stitch into the last 2 and not worry that the 3rd one is missing. So slip stitch into the last 2 stitches. And then turn and do the last row. One stitch missing is not going to make any difference, and for this kind of project I am happy to let that go and not lose sleep over it. So please don't worry. But if you were going to do some calculations, you know that it's a multiple of 3 plus 1 for this particular stitch. Okay, and then fasten off, cut and fasten off. Here's the wrong side with those slip stitch joins that you can see. And then this is the right side, which is much neater. So this is where we started on that right side and worked up and down to create that rib. So that's the first one. Let's do, or what should we do next? A yarn over slip stitch rib with a normal slip stitch combined, and we shall work in the back loop only this time. This is my favourite. So I don't have the pattern in front of me, but I'm pretty sure I start with a yarn over slip stitch in that first chain. Let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And again, back bumps. Occasionally I get all confused and I can't see the first one. Occasionally. Yarn over and pull through the first loop and the other 2 loops to make a yarn over slip stitch. So yarn over and then insert the hook, pull through essentially all the loops on your hook, yarn over, insert the hook into the back bump, yarn over and pull through all of the loops. Yeah, that's a yarn over slip stitch or a half double slip stitch. I've seen it called both, and for UK peeps that would be a half treble slip stitch. So we're looking to have 7 of these as we get to this last stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, that's what it looks like at the beginning. And this one is going to be 2 slip stitches because this not only is this yarn over slip stitch narrower than the half double, we're also, as we return back up, we're going to just do slip stitches in the back loop only. So skip the first 2 stitches and then insert the hook into the back loop only and slip stitch through, and work these kind of loosely. These are an absolute pain to work into if you're too tight with your tension, so please work them loosely. Chain 1. Then working down back towards the main body of your fabric, it's the yarn over slip stitches in the back loop only. I love working these. It's much nicer, much less painful than all just slip stitches. This one kind of feels like a real crochet stitch rather than a fiddly little floop. Maybe that's just me. And then 2 slip stitches into the foundation of your main piece. Turn, skip the 2 slip stitches, back loop only slip stitch action for the 7 stitches all the way up. So this one is a 2-row pattern repeat. We are yarn over slip stitch on the way down, normal slip stitch on the way up. And this one has, depending on which way you look at it, a right side and a wrong side. Unfortunately for me, the better looking side is also the side that has the slip stitches. So when I work this stitch, I make sure that my foundation row is the same colour as my rib to hide those slip stitches. When it's all the same colour, you can't see them. So I always make sure that that's the case for when I work this stitch. I'll just work a few more rows and then come back. So progress so far is that this is one side of the yarn over slip stitch rib, which looks quite like a nice rib actually, but on the other side, for some reason, this one is, it comes to life for me. I love it. I've been a bit rushy, so this long here looks a bit untidy, but in my blog post, I've got a little bit of a tip or a trick, if you like, on how to make this much neater. So pop along to the blog post that accompanies this tutorial and check out what that tip is, that technique to make this a nice straight edge. If I've got time, I will work to the end and revisit it. But as the builders are on their lunch break, I want to quickly rush ahead and show you the last join as you go rib whilst we've got a bit of quiet. I've got a granny square this time because I'm also going to show you how to do the join as you go around a corner, or try to, because I don't have the written pattern in front of me and I'm relying on brain power, which is always dangerous. So what I'm going to do is do single crochet back loop only on this one. It's not my favourite, but it's very, very popular, and I feel like I probably should include it. And it's probably, because it's so easy, it's a good one to use round corners because you're not thinking too much about anything other than, oh, it's just single crochet back loop only, this is fine. I'm going to attach my yarn 6 stitches before the corner and hope that I'm right. If I'm not, then you can laugh at me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's just do 7 this time. Back bumps. Let's go. Just some single crochets. 1, 2. Oops, split the yarn. 3, 4, should have 6, yep. 5, 6. Then I'm going to slip stitch twice. Miss those 2 slip stitches, and then single crochet back loop only 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oops, chain 1, and then another 6 down, back loop only. Now I'm using contrast colours so that you can see this better, but as I said before, if you want to use matchy yarn, I think probably it's probably the best thing. Missed the 2 slip stitches. 1, 2, slip stitch, slip stitch. Okay, so we've reached the corner where I've got 3 stitches. Now when I finish this last row before the corner, 2, rather than making 2 slip stitches across the next 2 stitches, I'm just going to slip stitch once into the next stitch, like so, just this one. Then this is where the increases begin, okay? And it's the same up and down rows, it's just you slip stitch into the same stitch, and then it fans out across and around the corner, which you can add to anything you like. Oops. Yeah, I got caught. Right, let's make sure I have 6 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, I do. Slip stitch into the same slip stitch as before. Turn, miss that slip stitch, and work your single crochets back loop only up the top again. Now I have this written on my blog, so if I do confuse you, visit the pattern in amongst the Join As You Go blog post, and then hopefully you've now got an idea about what you do. Use the pattern and this, and together you can see that basically it's just adding extra rows. Slip stitch into that one more time, and then when we go back the other way, we'll slip stitch into the next one. I'm just going to miss this join and work up here. Slip stitch once into the next corner stitch. Skip that slip stitch. So the way I like to remember it is that for all of those 3 corner stitches, I slip stitch into each one once 3 times. And that seems to help me know I don't need to do much more counting other than that, if that makes sense. So I've done 1 slip stitch into the middle of the 3. So I've completed, out of the 3 stitches in the corner, I've completed the first one, and now I'm about to make my second slip stitch into the next one. So that means I've got 1 more to go in that one. So I'm going to miss there. Got a horrible feeling the builders are going to start working again in a minute. So I might have to be silent from now on and, I don't know, cut out the jibber jabber. So I've got 1 more to go in the middle. 1, 2, 3, 4. Slip stitch into this middle one. Right, last corner stitch, ready to do the last bit of increasing. So 1 slip stitch, miss the slip stitch, and we're going to go up and down a couple more times, and then the rest of it is just normal working along the straight, so no more increases. Slip stitch. So we're going to go up and down 1 more time, join the slip stitch in this last corner stitch 1 more time before moving on just down a straight side. One, two, now if you find that your stitches create too much fabric, then feel free to experiment and play around with the number of increased rows you create. Perhaps this is too many for the corner that you want to do, because not all corners are right angle. Some are going to be more acute and other ones are going to be kind of a bit less. What's a less aggressive triangle called? Like, rather than just being like really kind of pointy, it might just be gradual. So all of those, I don't know the term, sorry, not off the top of my head, but all of those are gonna mean that you require more or less increases, right? Anyway, back to normal now. Slip stitch twice. Miss those 2 slip stitches, and then you've got your 6 back loop only single crochets. That's double crochets for UK peeps, but I'm sure you worked that out already. Okie pokey. So then we just Karen, I'm not going to work all the way around this square, I don't think. And that is the one thing about this stitch, is that it does take quite a while. But sometimes a labour of love is absolutely worth it, isn't it? 1, 2. So hopefully that makes sense. Now, there are other stitch patterns you can use for join as you go ribbing. These are just 3 of the ones that I've used probably the most often. And the other 2 stitches that I've used, you could adapt for working around a corner as well. There's absolutely no reason why you can't do that. In fact, I did that for the Gudrun shawl with the half double in the front 3rd loop, so check that out. Okie dokes. I think I'm just going to do this one last row, and then you'll get a really good idea about what it looks like when worked around a corner. And then I think probably a good block will also make it look super duper. Ta-da! And as I said, if you think that's too many, then you can reduce it a little bit as well. But ultimately, once you've blocked it out, it'll be nice and uniform. There you go.